everyone, this is Kevin from thechesswebsite.com. Today I wanted to go over a quick trap, but one that I enjoy. It's a trap in the Old Benoni defense. So if you're not familiar with the Old Benoni, starts out with pawn to d4 and then pawn to c5. Black's going to temporarily give up material in exchange for white giving up one of his strongest pawns. Obviously the pawn on E file and the D file are the most important. They control the center of the board. So black's going to temporarily, I say temporarily because it is going to be extremely difficult for white to hold on to the material if he does take that. But in this tutorial we're going to be going over if white does take on c5. So from here black's going to play pawn to e6. He's allowing his dark square bishop to get involved into the game. Obviously black would like his bishop to come to c5. He's then attacking the square here on f2, which, as we talked about in our other videos, is the weakest square for white early on into the game. So best case scenario, the bishop's going to take back this material on c5. Now in my opinion, the best route for white for here is actually to give back the material. So many people, anytime they're up in material, they feel like they have to hold on to that material. Anytime you can still stay with the lead and advantage as far as development or an attack, give up material. You don't have to hold on to it. But so many people do feel the need to hold on to it. So in this situation, white really has two different ideas as far as holding on to it. He can play bishop to e3, one option, and then pawn to b4, which is actually where our trap is going to be coming from today. First one I do want to go over is bishop to e3, just so you can see if you actually are playing this game. From here black can just play knight to c6. Again, simple development move. We do have this semi-open file for our rook to come on the c file later on to the game if we need to. After our knight comes to c6, our other knight's going to be coming to f6, and then is going to be coming to g4 as well, trying to get this bishop off here on e3. Again, it's going to be very difficult for white to hold on to this pawn on c5. But this bishop here on e3 is really hampering the development of the king side from white, which is not what white wants. Obviously, white later on would like to push his e pawn forward into the game. He would then like to get his light square bishop involved into the game, trying to attack this diagonal right here. He would also like to get his knight involved into the game and then castle on the king side if he so pleases. But a lot of times, instead of the bishop move coming to e3, hindering the development from white, players will always play pawn to b4. I play the king's gambit a lot. Anytime that they're trying to hold on to this pawn on f4, a lot of times you'll see the pawn coming to g5. Same with the Old Benoni defense on the queen side. Players will like to play pawn to b4, trying to hold on to this pawn on c5. Now from here, black, all he has to do is play pawn to a5, and I feel like from here black's actually already equalized. So the first thing you want to do from black anytime you're playing is you want to equalize. White obviously has a distinct advantage going first. He does have that lead in development. He's usually the one attacking early on. So anytime black can equalize in a game or get closer and closer to equalizing, especially in this case we're only 3 moves into the game, it's going to be very, very good for black. So just keep that in mind whenever you're playing. First thing you want to do from black is you want to equalize. Now from here, white could always take if he wants to. He could take on a5. Black can capture on c5, as we talked about. Very great square for us. Getting our dark square bishop involved into the game, controlling the center of the board. Obviously, white's also going to lose this pawn on a5. We have both the queen here on d8, and we also have the rook here on a8, both attacking it. Not only is black now equal in material after he takes this pawn on a5, but he's also now leading in a development standpoint, trying to control the center of the board here. So white doesn't have a whole lot going for him. Now do note that if white does try to hold on to this pawn on a5, which you really shouldn't do, but a lot of times people, again, as we talked about, always try to hold on to material. If he does play, let's say, bishop to d2, obviously now we're not going to take with our queen or our rook here on the 8th rank, but now black can just bring his queen to f6. Black is now threatening to bring his queen and checkmate here. So white's now going to be losing this rook here on a1. Again, he could always, if he wanted to, try to salvage the rook here on a1, but then again he's going to start losing a lot more material. He could bring his queen here to f2, he could bring his bishop here to f2, so it's obviously either way white's still going to lose material. So as far as white's concerned, he should pretty much just lose this pawn right here. He could always develop with knight to f3, again trying to stop this. But again, from here, queen's just going to come to a1 and gobble up this rook here on a1. So, again, as we talked about before, black's going to equalize, especially in material, once he takes this pawn here on a5. But if white does try anything, with his bishop to d2, you do have other options. But a lot of times, white might actually play a different move. Instead of taking on a5, obviously, as we talked about, that would be a mistake. But he may make the mistake and play pawn to c3. This is actually a mistake because we can take right back with pawn taking on b4. Now, I do just want to preface this. So many people always watch the trap videos and tell me that someone made a mistake and no one would ever play like that. Now, I do understand that you may be the greatest chess player that's ever played and you've never played someone that made a mistake. But I also get a lot of people saying that, hey, Kevin, my opponents are making mistakes, but I don't know how to capitalize on those mistakes. So, again, this is a trap video, so someone is going to make a mistake. If you don't enjoy that, then you can always watch a different video. But in this situation, we're going to be going over a trap. So someone did make a mistake. In this case, the first mistake is just pawn to c3. Obviously, it doesn't do a whole lot. White really is trying to hold on to this pawn on b4, which is the defender of the pawn on c5. But it just kind of starts to crumble. If white does take on b4, then black can just play queen to f6. And he's going to win material. Now, obviously, white right now is going to lose his rook on a1 unless he does something. The really only option that he does have here is if his knight comes to c3, he's just going to have to sacrifice that knight on c3. And after the bishop comes here to d2, then the queen can come back to a3. Obviously, black is not only up in material now, but he does have a lot more going for him. Obviously, he's leading in development. It's going to be a lot easier for him to get his dark square bishop involved into the game, castle on the king side. White has done nothing on his king side at all. None of his minor pieces, major pieces have developed. Not even his king pawn has developed. So it's going to be very, very hard for white to really not only do anything in the game, but even get his pieces developed into the game. Obviously, black still does have the semi-open file for his rook here on a8. He's going to be attacking a lot to the game. Obviously, next move he can bring his knight to c6, really try to control the center of the board. He can always bring his knight to f6, trying to control this e4 square if white tries to push forward. So a lot of things going for black. Obviously, this is going to be a very, very difficult game for white to play. So again, the reason I like this trap is because the Old Benoni is actually very, very powerful for black. It's very easy to equalize. There's a lot of great opportunities to attack. And even if white does not, make the mistake and he doesn't, defend with his pawn, with, b4, and even after the pawn comes to a5, he doesn't play c3 and he doesn't fall for the trap, black's still going to have a very, very good game. So that's one of the reasons why I like this. Even if you watch the video and say, Kevin, no one would ever do that, that's completely fine. You can completely ignore the trap itself. This is still going to be a great defense. If you do play this and you see someone fall for the trap, which I have a few times, it's always fun to lay a trap on someone. So again, just pawn takes on b4, and then after they take on b4, you're just going to bring your queen to f6. So hopefully you guys enjoyed another trap video. I've got a few more coming out in the near future. Feel free to leave comments, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Thanks for watching.